Most large farms across the American Midwest have a separate shed for machinery. Tractors, harvesters, plows, heavy machines that spend years working the land. And when they finally grow old, farmers usually push them into the shed and leave them there. Dust gathers over the engine. Oil dries inside the pipes. Some tractors sit there for decades without moving. But the tractor on Aaron Miller's farm never stayed still for very long. Because every night, at exactly 2:13 a.m., it started itself. Aaron bought the farm near the end of summer. It was a large property surrounded by wheat fields. The farmhouse was old, but still sturdy. A cattle barn stood to the east, and the machinery shed sat about 70 meters behind the house. The building was long and low. Its metal roof rattled whenever the wind passed over the fields. Inside the shed were 3 tractors. 2 of them were newer, still used during harvest. The third one was much older. It sat in the far corner of the shed. Most of its red paint had peeled away. The tires were covered in dried mud. Aaron had asked the real estate agent about it. The agent only shrugged. The previous owner left it there. Hasn't moved in 20 years. Aaron slept well the first night on the farm. No traffic, no city noise, only the wind passing through the wheat fields. Until a strange sound woke him, a deep mechanical rumble, the sound of a diesel engine turning over. Aaron opened his eyes and looked at the clock. 2:13 a.m. The sound came again. The unmistakable sound of a tractor engine starting. Aaron sat up in bed and listened. The noise wasn't coming from inside the house. It was coming from outside, from the direction of the machinery shed. Aaron walked to the window. The wheat field behind the house was completely dark. No vehicles, no people. But near the shed, a faint yellow light appeared. 2 narrow beams cutting through the darkness. Headlights. Aaron frowned. Before going to bed, he had checked the shed. All the machines had been shut off, and the old tractor in the corner didn't even have a key anymore. But as Aaron kept watching, the large wooden doors of the shed slowly shifted, and the diesel engine sound grew louder. Aaron stayed at the window for a few more seconds. The diesel engine from the shed kept rumbling in the distance, low, heavy, exactly like the sound of an old tractor idling. Grrr, grrr. Aaron grabbed his jacket and a flashlight. He stepped outside. The night air was cold and damp. The wheat field behind the house moved gently in the wind. The machinery shed stood in the darkness ahead, a long black shape against the open land. 2 yellow beams of light still shone through the cracks of the doors. Tractor headlights. Aaron walked faster. The closer he got, the louder the engine sounded. Grrr. Grrr. The large wooden doors of the shed were slightly open. Aaron pushed one of them. The hinge groaned loudly. The headlights inside the shed flooded the doorway with light. 3 tractors were parked inside. 2 newer ones stood near the entrance. The old red tractor sat in the far corner, and it was the one running. Its headlights were on, gray diesel smoke drifting slowly from the exhaust pipe. Aaron stepped inside. The engine echoed against the metal walls of the shed, but the moment he looked toward the driver's seat, Aaron stopped. The seat was empty. No one was sitting there. Aaron raised the flashlight and pointed it toward the cabin. No movement, no shadow, just the steering wheel, and the steering wheel was turning slightly. Slow, almost too slow to notice. Aaron stood still, his heartbeat suddenly louder in his chest. He walked closer to the tractor. The engine continued idling. Grrr. Grrr. Aaron climbed onto the metal step beside the cabin. He leaned inside and looked over the control panel. There was no key in the ignition. In fact, the ignition slot itself was rusted shut, as if no one had used it in years. Aaron pulled the fuel shutoff lever. The engine sputtered. Grrr. Grrr. Then it died completely. The shed fell silent. Only the wind outside moved through the wheat fields. Aaron climbed down from the tractor, preparing to head back to the house. But when he pointed the flashlight at the dirt floor, Aaron stopped again. The ground inside the shed was still damp from the rain earlier that day, and in the mud there were fresh tire tracks, large tracks, from the old tractor. But they didn't begin where the tractor was parked. They started at the open doors of the shed, as if the tractor had just driven in from outside.
Aaron didn't sleep again after that. The old tractor was silent now. The shed had gone dark. The whole farm had settled back into the kind of quiet people always imagine when they talk about country life. But the tire tracks in the mud were still there. Fresh, heavy, impossible. They began at the shed doors and ended beneath the tractor, as if the machine had driven in from outside, parked itself, and waited for morning. Aaron stood in the shed for a long time, staring at them. The beam of his flashlight moved slowly over the floor, across the damp mud, across the dark ridges pressed into the ground by the tires, across the empty space where no driver should have been. Then he noticed something else. The tracks were clean. Too clean. No boot prints climbed up into the cab. No footprints led away from the tractor. No signs of anyone crossing the floor at all. The old machine had moved, but no human being had walked with it. That was when Aaron remembered the security camera. The previous owner had left several cameras mounted around the property, one near the front gate, one covering the cattle barn, one facing the machinery shed. Aaron went back to the house, made coffee, waited for daylight. Not because daylight made him feel safer, but because some things are easier to watch when the sun is up. Around 7 in the morning, he sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and pulled up the recording from the night before. The video began like every other farm security clip. A dark yard, the shed sitting still, the wheat field moving gently in the wind. Aaron dragged the timeline forward. 2:09, nothing. 2:10, Nothing. 2:11. Just darkness and the edge of the field. 2:12. Still nothing. Then the timestamp turned to 2:13, and immediately the headlights inside the shed came on. Not gradually, not flickering. They snapped on at full brightness, two sharp beams cutting through the cracks in the wooden doors. Aaron paused the video and leaned closer. No person had entered the frame. No truck had driven up. No flashlight had crossed the yard. He rewound the footage 10 seconds and watched again. Same result. At exactly 2:13, the headlights turned on. Aaron let the video keep playing. A few seconds later, the left shed door shifted. Then the right one. Not wide, just enough for the tractor to move through. And then the old red tractor rolled out into the yard. Slowly, straight, deliberately. The engine smoke rose in pale gray clouds from the exhaust. The headlights swept over the mud. The machine moved like something under control, not drifting, not lurching, not rolling downhill. It drove itself out to the center of the yard and stopped. Aaron's eyes were fixed on the cab. The driver's seat looked empty. The steering wheel twitched once, then turned slightly. The front tires shifted with it. Aaron felt the same cold pressure he had felt in the shed. He paused the video again, zoomed in. The picture quality was poor. Night grain filled the screen. The glass of the cab reflected just enough light to hide as much as it revealed. But on the third time he zoomed in, he noticed something. A shape. Not in the passenger seat, not outside the tractor. Behind the wheel. It wasn't clear. It wasn't fully visible. But there was something darker than the dark around it. A mass where a person should have been. Aaron stared at the screen without blinking. Then he dragged the timeline back 3 seconds and played it again in slow motion. The tractor stood in the yard. The wheel turned. The cab shifted in the light. And for one frame, one single frame, the shape became clearer. A shoulder, a bent neck, the outline of a head hanging at the wrong angle. Aaron's hand slipped off the mouse. He sat back from the table. His coffee had gone cold. The house felt too quiet. But the video wasn't over. The tractor turned, then drove toward the field. Not quickly, not wildly, like it had somewhere specific to go. Aaron watched it leave the yard and enter the wheat. Its headlights crossed the rows in a slow curve. The machine cut a wide circle beyond the shed, then moved deeper into the field. For almost 4 minutes it stayed there, its lights moving through the crop in a route that looked purposeful, not random, not mechanical drift. Work. It looked like it was following a path. Then, just as steadily as it had left, the tractor turned and came back. The same arc, the same speed, the same line through the yard. It returned to the shed, re-entered the darkness, stopped in the exact position Aaron had found it in. The headlights went out. The engine stopped. The doors settled. The timestamp advanced to 2:19, and the farm became still again. Aaron closed the laptop, then opened it again, then watched the whole thing one more time, Because somewhere between fear and disbelief, the mind starts hoping it made a mistake, that a trick of angle, a reflection, a sensor glitch can still explain everything. But the second viewing was worse, because now Aaron noticed something he had missed the first time. When the tractor crossed the yard, there was something trailing behind it. Not large, not obvious, just a dark line dragging through the mud, as if something was being pulled. And the line stopped exactly where the tire marks stopped, right in front of the shed, right where the cab went dark. Aaron stared at the paused frame and whispered to himself without meaning to. What the hell was it dragging?
Aaron drove to Walter's place that afternoon. Walter was the nearest neighbor. An old man with a weathered face and the habit of answering questions only after deciding whether the truth was worth saying. His farm sat just beyond a line of cottonwoods about a mile away. When Aaron pulled into the yard, Walter was mending a gate. Aaron didn't bother with small talk. He told him about the old red tractor, the engine, the lights, the video. Walter kept working for several seconds after Aaron finished, not because he hadn't heard, because he had. Then he straightened up, wiped his hands on his jacket, and said the first thing that made Aaron's stomach sink. "It still starts at 2:13? Aaron said nothing for a second, then nodded. Walter looked away toward the fields, not surprised, not confused, just tired. "Then it's the same as before," he said. Aaron asked what that meant. Walter leaned against the gate and told him the story. The farm used to belong to a man named Howard Beck. Hard man, good farmer. Never trusted hired hands, but depended on them anyway when harvest came. One autumn, decades ago, he hired a young worker named Caleb Ross. Caleb was barely in his 20s, strong, quiet. Always the one sent out late when something still needed finishing. The old red tractor had been Caleb's machine, not because it was the best, but because it was the worst. Howard gave the youngest man the oldest equipment. That was how it worked back then. Walter said the accident happened during wheat season. There had been rain earlier that week. The ground near the lower field stayed muddy. The work ran late every night. On the last night anyone saw Caleb alive, he was hauling equipment back in after dark, alone. Howard claimed he heard the engine stop sometime after 2 in the morning, then start again, then stop. Nobody went out to look right away. On farms, engines stop and start all the time. You don't run into the dark every time metal makes a new sound. But when Caleb didn't come back, Howard finally went out with a lantern. He found the red tractor in the yard, engine warm, lights off, mud on the tires, and Caleb was under the rear wheel. Walter's voice lowered after that. He said the wheel had crossed his chest, crushed him so badly that Howard couldn't tell at first which way the body had been facing. Aaron felt his throat tighten. He asked what time it happened. Walter didn't answer immediately. He looked Aaron straight in the face and said, "The clock in the shed was stopped at 2:13. Aaron stood there in silence. The same number, the same time, the same tractor. Walter went on. At first, people thought the machine had slipped, that Caleb had fallen while trying to climb back on. But that explanation never sat right with the men who had worked those fields, because the marks in the mud told a stranger story. The tractor had made a full loop through the lower field before coming back to the yard, and Caleb's boot prints, for part of the way, ran beside it, not behind it, not under it, beside it, as if he had been walking next to the tractor before he ended up beneath it. Aaron asked if Walter was saying Caleb had been dragged. Walter shook his head. "No," he said. "That would have made more sense." Then he added something worse. "The tracks stopped before the body did." Aaron stared at him. Walter explained. They found Caleb's boot prints ending near the gate to the lower field, but the tractor tracks continued, and the body was discovered much farther up, which meant one of two things. Either Caleb had somehow ended up under the tractor without leaving any marks in the mud, or someone else had been driving. Aaron asked what happened to the tractor after that. Walter laughed once, without humor. Howard parked it in the shed and swore he'd tear it apart for parts by winter. Never did. Then Howard sold the place before spring.
The next owner complained about the tractor turning over in the middle of the night. Said he heard it idling. Said he found fresh tire tracks in the wheat. People laughed at him. Until he moved out less than a year later. Walter looked back toward Aaron's place. "The thing about old farms," he said, "is they don't forget the way work was done on them." Aaron drove home before sunset. The sky over the wheat had turned a dull gray. Wind pushed through the field in slow waves. The shed stood exactly where it always had, the red tractor inside, quiet, still, as if it hadn't driven itself through the field the night before, as if it hadn't carried something dead behind it. Aaron parked by the house and sat in the truck for a while without getting out. Because now the story had shape, a name, a death, a time. And that somehow made it worse. Mystery at least leaves room for doubt. History doesn't. That night, Aaron made up his mind. He wasn't just going to watch this happen again. If the tractor moved at 2:13, he was going to be there when it did. Not at the window, not behind a camera, in the yard, facing it. Aaron did everything a rational man could think to do. Before midnight, he went into the shed with a toolbox and a work light. He opened the hood of the red tractor and stared into the old engine bay. Dust, dry oil, rust at the seams. Then he started removing parts. First, the battery. It came loose with effort, heavy and cold in his hands. He carried it outside and set it against the shed wall. Then the spark plugs, one by one, laid neatly on an old rag. Then the fuel line. Then the cap. Then the tank itself. By the time he finished, the tractor should have been nothing more than dead metal. No spark, no fuel, no power. Aaron stepped back and looked at it under the hanging light. The machine seemed smaller somehow, pathetic, almost harmless. He wanted that feeling to be true. He closed the hood, shut off the work light, left the shed doors open just enough that he could see inside from the yard. Then he waited. Not in the house, outside, standing in the cold with his coat zipped to the throat. The wheat field moved softly under the night wind. Clouds drifted over the moon. The farm looked ordinary. 2:10, 2:11, 2:12. Aaron's hands were numb from the cold. His eyes stayed locked on the dark shape in the shed. Then the clock on his phone changed to 2:13, and the headlights came on. 2 yellow beams ignited in the darkness as if someone had thrown a switch. The engine turned over immediately. Aaron didn't move. For 1 second, the mind still searches for another answer. A hidden battery, residual fuel, a prank. Then the red tractor rolled forward, slowly, steadily, out of the shed. The front tires crossed the threshold and crushed into the mud. The machine stopped in the yard, just long enough for Aaron to see into the cab. At first, the seat looked empty. Then the angle shifted. The headlights bounced slightly over the ruts. And there he was, a man-shaped thing behind the wheel, head hanging too far to one side, one arm low across the steering column, shirt dark across the chest. Not stained, broken. The torso looked caved in, flattened at the center, as if something massive had passed over it. Aaron's stomach turned. The steering wheel began to turn on its own, or under hands he could not clearly see. The front wheels followed. Then the tractor drove toward the field, not toward Aaron, not wildly, toward work. It entered the wheat and began tracing a route in a slow, broad arc. The same path from the video, the same loop Walter had described. Aaron followed at a distance, boots sinking into the softer ground. The headlights moved through the crop like searching eyes. And now that he was closer, he saw something else. Trailing behind the tractor was a chain. Not a long one, maybe 6 feet. It bounced and dragged over the mud in uneven jerks. At the end of it, something dark snagged and skipped along the ground. Aaron couldn't tell what it was, a bundled tarp, old fabric, or something with weight and shape that he did not want the light to fully reveal. The chain left a long groove in the field, the same dragged mark he had seen near the shed. The tractor completed the loop and headed back. Aaron stepped aside as it passed him, and as it did, the figure in the cab lifted its head, only slightly, enough for Aaron to understand one horrible thing. It wasn't looking at the field. It was looking at him. The tractor returned to the shed, rolled into the dark, stopped in the exact place it had started. The headlights went out. The engine died. Aaron stood in the yard until dawn. He didn't go back into the shed, not until the sky turned pale. When morning finally came, he walked inside. The red tractor was there, silent, cold, the hood still closed from the night before. Aaron opened it, and for a moment he thought exhaustion had finally broken something in his mind. The engine bay was empty, not disconnected, not damaged, empty. No fuel tank, no battery, no plugs, no engine block at all. Just open space and mounting brackets rusted with age. Aaron stumbled backward and hit the side of the shed, because whatever he had seen moving across the field, whatever had idled in the yard, whatever had looked at him from that cab, had not been driven by a machine. 2 months later, Aaron sold the farm. Cheap, fast, no argument. He moved to another town and tried to leave the whole thing behind him. And for a while, he almost succeeded. Then, one evening, he was scrolling through posts in the local county group online when he saw a video from a name he didn't recognize. The caption read, "Can someone explain what keeps happening at the old Miller place?" Aaron opened the clip. The camera shook in someone's hands. A wheat field at night. Wind in the microphone. Darkness everywhere. Then 2 yellow headlights came on in the middle of the frame. The red tractor was out in the field again, moving in the same slow loop. The timestamp in the corner read 2:13 a.m. The man recording, "I bought this place last week." Then his voice dropped lower. "There's no engine in that tractor." The video ended there. Aaron shut off his phone and sat in the dark for a long time. Because until that moment, some part of him had still hoped the thing haunting that farm belonged to the machine. But now, he knew the truth. The tractor was never what came back at 2:13. It was just the thing Caleb still used to reach the field.